Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined once again by the man himself, Jon Anik. Jon, you're around the world at the moment, everywhere, covering so many events. You're a busy man, so I want to say thank you for your time. And I also loving the work you're doing with you and Kenny on the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, check the podcast out if you've not done so already. I will put the link in the description below on SoundCloud and YouTube, all that stuff. So you can wherever you're listening to this, people, you can find the link to check out their work because they're doing some awesome stuff. But yeah, Jon, thanks for coming back.
My pleasure, man. Good to be with you as always.
Right, Jon. Well, obviously I brought you back because the UFC 204 card is on. I've spoken to Robin Black. I've spoken to James Lane. I'm just so pumped about this card because the fact that the UFC are bringing a pay-per-view to the UK. I'm literally just like a kid at Christmas at the moment. But yeah, I thought I'd get you on because I love your analysis, the way you look at the fights, and I like everyone's points of view. So let's get this started. There's been a couple of little shake-ups and turnarounds, but everything looks like it's been addressed now. Okay, so first up on the card, now I have to admit, I don't know how much you know about Mark Dietsky, but he's fighting making his debut for the UFC in the lightweight division against a guy who I think really needs to get a win, Lucas Stasiak. There we go. Or is it? No, it's not. It's Stievsky. Stievsky, that's the one. Sorry, I'm getting these two mixed up now, guys.
They pronounce it
Sayevsky. Do you know what? I love your little pronunciation that you do on your podcast because even I sit there and I just go, I'm winging it. Stayevsky. Lucas Stayevsky. Now, the guy, I tell you what, he came in and his debut was against Nick Hein. Now, that is a badass debut to make against anyone because Nick Hein he's just so good at what he does. He is, he gets the decisions, but he's so well rounded. He's just a pain to fight. Like, Lucas showed some great potential in both fights, actually. Even though he lost his last bout, he showed some good bouts. He's got good hands, really crisp hands, and he throws with venom. I like the kid, but the thing is, he's making his debut against Mark. Mark's making his debut against him, but Mark has got some power. This dude, he's a British potential in the lightweight division, and the guy hits like a freight train. I think this here is going to be a hell of a way to kick off the whole card because I think there's going to be fireworks.
Yeah, starting the night with a couple lightweight fights, and Sayevsky's interesting. I got to work his last fight against Gilbert Burns over the summer, and he's a confident kid. He's got a good frame for the division. Certainly has some pop. Nice submission skills. I mean, you talk about Nick Hein being no picnic. Same can be said for Gilbert Durinho Burns, obviously, who submitted him in his last fight. But, it'll be interesting to see what Sayevsky does here in a fight that, he'll probably be favored to win. His back's up against the wall. It's probably a must-win for him in terms of his UFC contract. But, yeah, man, it's a deep card top to finish. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how these fights play out because it's going to be in the middle of the night. Dan Henderson at 46 years old is probably making that walk at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I feel for my man Brian Stan doing the call. It's going to be a long night for him, early morning, but it's exciting, man. I'm excited for Michael Bisping. It's going to be exciting all around. I'm jealous you're going to be in the building.
And do you know what? I'll hopefully be able to share a bowl of cornflakes with Brian Stan in the morning after the fights.
There you go.
And look, the next fight, I know, honestly, I'm so pumped right now. I'm even just, yeah. Okay, the next bout is another lightweight fight. And if I'm honest with you, this fight is a fantastic fight, this one. The fact that it's this low on the card is a bit surprising, but then again, because it's in the UK, Leonardo Santos against Adriano Martins, these two pairings are wicked. Like, obviously, Santos, who is phenomenal at jiu-jitsu. That I think is he 5 times world jiu-jitsu? I can't remember how many times he's won it. But then again, his last fight, finishing Kevin Lee, and wow, was that a beautiful right hand there to really rock Kevin Lee. And then Adriano Martins himself, he has come out of his shell in the last few fights. Obviously, the loss to Cerrone, which, kudos, you lose to Cerrone. It's very common for a lot of people. But Martins, he suddenly has his right hook. Now, I don't know if it's the work he's doing with ATT that they've found out he's got this little sweet weapon, because obviously being a southpaw makes a big difference. His right hook, his venom written all over it, and I think a lot of people probably might not notice that as much or really recognise it, but man, this fight is so good.
Well, it just speaks to the depth in the UFC lightweight division, the fact that these guys are fighting this early on the card. I mean, Leonardo Santos hasn't lost in the UFC, and Adriano Martins, he's beaten guys like Rustam Khabilov and Islam Makhachev, and I don't
Yep.
know that those guys have lost to other guys in the UFC, right? I mean, those guys are where Chris Wade, I think both of his winning streak went to die with Khabilov, and then he lost to Makhachev his last time out. So it's a competitive fight, no doubt about it. I think it's a good test for Santos in particular at this stage of his career. I think with respect to some other guys, Pantolino, his victims, that this is probably the best fighter that he will have faced in the UFC. So yeah, and another interesting prelim obviously on UFC Fight Pass, and then Mike Perry and Danny Roberts is next. This is a pretty good Fight Pass lineup. Featured about obviously people have their eyes on, with Hot Chocolate taking on Mike Perry. Big hopes for Danny Roberts. I'm sure you're excited for that one too.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, you said it there. The Fight Pass alone, if you've got Fight Pass, people, if you haven't, I don't know if I should be friends with anyone who hasn't got it, but I've had it for an exceptionally long time. It's worth every penny. This will get your juices flowing, ladies and gentlemen, these 3 fights alone for the fight card. Danny Roberts, he is a super potential future contender for the Brits here. Danny Roberts, he's a really good, well-rounded welterweight. And what he did was he did a smart move. Even before he signed to the UFC, went to Black Zillions, has been training there with a handful of beasts, let's say. And you've got, he's taken on Mike Perry, who came into the UFC and pretty much shocked everyone when he made his debut, coming in and making a bit of short notice fight. But look, I think Danny Roberts, in my opinion, he's got beautiful power. He's very quick. Super athletic kid. I've got my eyes on Roberts for this fight. Perry, I didn't see enough of him in his first fight to get a good enough idea of how he's going to handle this fight.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Roberts is in his prime, and I think you're right. Making the decision to go to the Black Zillions when he did should pay dividends. Again, good litmus test. I mean, I think this is probably the best guy he will have faced. Certainly, I think you look at, Nathan Coy, Dominique Steele. I think it's probably the best guy he will have faced in the UFC, so we'll see what Danny Roberts can do with it. He'll probably be favored in the fight. But yeah, no, I mean, people are high on Mike Perry. I mean, you're right. I mean, small sample size in the UFC, but I think he'll be ready to go on the road and try to upset some people.
Well, he certainly did that on his debut. And look, they're going on to the prelim. Kicking off the prelims on, if you're in the United States, on Fox Sports 1. If you're in the UK, it's probably BT Sport. Look, we got in the welterweight division, again, this is another one which will not be going to the ground, which could be potential for fight of the night, in the fact that the two of them it's going to be an exhibition of throwing and banging and knocking each other out potentially. Leon Edwards against Albert Tumanov. Now, I've got a little bit of a man crush on Albert Tumanov because his striking is so smooth and slick. Love the guy as a contender. He lost to Gunnar Nelson, got rear naked choke on him. Let's be honest, it's not a bad thing to happen to you because Gunnar Nelson isn't too bad on the ground. Who's also going to be fighting at UFC Belfast, ladies and gentlemen, headline that act, and I'll be going to that event. But look, Leon Edwards, he's got a good name to make a statement in that welterweight division. I think, John. I think Leon Edwards is a very patient fighter. He has got power, but Albert Tumanov, I don't know. I just love that guy.
Yeah, tough matchup for Leon Edwards for sure, but we'll see what he can do with it. 25-year-old kid. I think for a while, a lot of people maybe thought his ceiling was higher than it is. But yeah, I mean, I think output's going to be key. He's got to not be afraid of this fight. Because two men all just swarm and bury you. So yeah, man, deep lineup, man. Lot of interesting prelims for sure.
It is, bro. It is. Next up, do you know what? I'm so happy Davy Grant is competing, and now, well, obviously he came back after the injuries, and then now he's getting, back in the cage. Second fight since his injuries. He's taken on Damien. Now I'm gonna get this one. Stasiak. Yeah.
Stasiak.
Yeah,
you better rifle through these prelims. You're not leaving any time for the main card. You're going 13 fights deep, aren't you?
Bro, I'm going 13 fights. I'm going to make it quick, okay? Davy Grant coming in. I think he's got a tough test against Stasiak, and I'd look forward to seeing Davy Grant fight. I just want to mention them all because I think they're all worthy of it. Okay, let's go to quickly. I want to mention, I have to admit, I'm going to be supporting Rob Font against Ian Entwistle. Ian Entwistle has one game plan. get a heel hook. If you can't get a heel hook,
Right.
it ain't going to happen. And then he goes down and he breaks mentally. Ian Entwistle as well, as a person, he ain't a very nice guy, trust me. Rob Font all the way. And in fact, Rob Font has been showing fantastic work in that bantamweight division, losing to only top-notch fighters in that weight class. And look, bantamweight division, how can you not love Alcantara against Brad Pickett? Now, that fight should have happened before on the Fight Night card, Fight Night 92 or something like that. I can't remember which one it was. It should have happened. It's now going down. Both of them are going to literally show everyone what these two bantamweights and what the bantamweight division is all about, because these guys are exciting, fun fighters. So that's just a couple more fights to finish off the prelim card. Let's go to the main card then. All right, John. All right, let's get to the main card, bro. Okay, let's start off. I loved actually the original fight that got made, which was Marisad Betic against Arnold Allen, and I absolutely gutted about Arnold Allen getting injured, because Arnold, I know him personally. I was absolutely gutted for the lad. He probably cut himself shaving, but it's all good. It's happened. Injuries happen. Then you had who was the Jeremy Kennedy? I think Canadian kid coming in who was actually wanting to fight. He was wanting to fight at featherweight because he made his debut at lightweight. And then he had an injury, but now Russell Doan, I tell you what, he's got some cojones stepping up, bantamweight up to featherweight, stepping in. It's a hell of a fight, because I've got to be honest with you, Mirsad is a guy I really see as a potential contender pushing at the end of 2017.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the only thing working against Mirsad Bektic is the health. He looked like he was going to work his way into the top 10 when he was forced to the sidelines with a torn ACL. So obviously a tough spot for Russell Doan to be in. You know, another hungry Hawaiian who's not afraid to take on a top 15 guy on short notice. And, you know, Russell Doan is UFC tested, right? So he's going to go in there and he's going to scrap. But Mirsad Bektic is about the closest thing I've seen to George St. Pierre in a long time. Just the way he times his takedowns, the entries are just a thing of beauty, and he sends you flying across the cage. So, man, I'm with you. The Arnold Allen Bektic fight was just fire, and it's disappointing that it couldn't happen. You know, I know when they made that fight, I think that Sean Shelby was surprised. I forget which side was offered the fight. Maybe Bektic chose Allen or vice versa. And I think Sean was pleasantly surprised that both guys wanted a challenge that stiff. And obviously, it would have been an amazing way to kick off this main card. And, dude, the Pickett Alcantara prelim is just awesome. I mean, what a perfect way to segue into this main card. The styles on both of those guys is such that, you know, that prelim main event is slotted there for a reason. And I think that fight is really bulletproof in terms of the way it's going to entertain, and that's why it's there. So, you know, hopefully the UK fans pace themselves and they save some energy for deep into the morning, because these fights are just... It's a great card, and I think as long as you don't get there too early, you know.
Hey, I'm going to be there from the very first fight. I'll probably be there from 11 o'clock, my brother. I'll tell you what I'm doing on Thursday night. Me and the boys, we're going to watch the Arizona Cardinals play, and we're going to watch that on Thursday night. Get our body clocks ticking up for 4 a.m. Get ourselves ready, you see, for Saturday night. We're on it, John. We're taking it serious, you know. Let's have a look here. Heavyweight division. Now, this is another one where the matchup got changed, but it's happened. It's okay. Stefan Struve against Daniel Omilanchuk. Now, that matchup itself, it's almost like Struve versus Mark Hunt again. You know, because I've met Daniel. He's about 6 foot, but the thing is, I've never seen a head that enormous on a human being. Like, that guy has got a crater for it. An asteroid for a head. He's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
Daniel. He's got a huge head. I just want to see Stefan Struve with consistency. His last fight was against Bigfoot Silva. Now, that fight did not show enough of what we could have seen from Struve, because it ended so quick. Obviously, that's what a lot of fights would like to have happen. And a lot of people mistaken what happened there. He actually got Bigfoot in the solar plexus and winded him, and that's what dropped Bigfoot Silva. A lot of people think he needed him and dropped him. He actually got him in the... You can see he basically knocked the wind out of him, and that's what made... Bigfoot drop. But yeah, I hope to see consistency from Struve. For Daniel, if this goes past this first round, I see that he does tire a little bit, and then he starts to just go with the loading up for one big shot trying to finish.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on a lot of good points. I'm excited to see what Omielanchuk can do with what is the highest profile fight of his career by
Yeah,
far. I called
yeah,
his last fight against Alexei Oleinik in South Dakota this
yes,
summer, and he impressed me. I mean, able to outwork a guy as physical as Oleinik. One thing I also like about Omielanchuk is he's exceedingly hard to put away. So he,
yeah.
he is like Mark Hunt in that way as well, that you almost feel like you need a weapon other than your hands and your feet to try to put him away. So I'm not sure Struve's going to be able to get him out of there. Cardio issues do concern me a little bit. I do think Struve, if he really shows the killer instinct and goes in there just to try to kick somebody's ass for once,
Hmm.
I think the finish might materialize.
Yeah.
But I think it's a competitive 15-minute fight, and I'm curious to see what Omielanchuk can do with the showcase.
And then we have what is going to be. There's a lot riding on this fight in the light heavyweight division. I'm absolutely pumped for this, Mr. Anik. OSP over St. Preux against Jimmy Manuwa. When I heard this fight get announced, I got excited for a couple of reasons. The fact that you're probably going to see both dudes stand, and you're going to see a beautiful technical fight because you get the Jimmy Manuwa has that very beautiful kind of Muay Thai style, very crisp, clean strikes. With OSP, he's so variable with his strikes. It's what's exciting about his game, and the thing I like about this fight up is that outside of it, these two guys are just there on the cusp of pushing for that kind of up in that top echelon of the light heavyweight division. OSP had that, kudos. He went 5 rounds with Jon Jones. Not a lot of people get to go 5 rounds with Jon Jones, even with a broken arm, which even makes it even more impressive. I think that will probably actually give him a lot of confidence going into the fight and going into the matchup mentally and psychologically. It's just a good fight to watch.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think it's a great matchup, and you're right. The stakes are really high because for Jimmy Manuwa, I remember watching his highlight reel and some of his fights outside the UFC before his
Yeah.
UFC debut and thinking, man, if this guy can improve the other facets of his game, he could be champion. And largely in the UFC, he's been very good. I mean, he's only lost to elite competition, granted knocked out by Gustafsson and most recently Anthony Johnson.
Yeah.
But he did take Rumble to a second round, which not a lot of guys can say. And I still feel like the ceiling's high for Jimmy Manuwa. I mean, he's not a spring chicken, though, right? So this is one that he sort of has to have at 36 years old if he wants to ever dream of getting into even a title eliminator, never mind a title fight. I think Ovince St. Preux's got to mix it up here. There's no doubt the Jones fight is going to be a confidence booster for him, but I don't know that we want to overstate that, right? Just because he went 25 minutes with Jon Jones doesn't mean that Manuwa can't kick him in the head and turn his lights out. So I'm curious to see what Jimmy Manuwa can do here. I think sometimes he can be his own worst enemy, and I think that just when it comes to his defense at times, But in this matchup, I see a little bit of value with Jimmy Manuwa. I think you're really going to get his best. I think he'll be buoyed by the Manchester crowd, and wouldn't be surprised to see him spring the upset.
And I tell you what, if Jimmy Manuwa, no matter if he wins or loses, I want his next fight to be the Shogun fight, which he was meant to have before he got the ankle injury. I'd love to see that matchup happen no matter what. That's definitely what I want to see in the future get mixed up. Co-main event. Wow, what a crazy fight this is, because you got to think Vitor Belfort against Gegard Mousasi. Now, Gegard Mousasi is one of them guys. He's super laid back and doesn't say a lot, but he's one of the guys. He's had over 40 odd fights, or something like that. Crazy. It's insane how many fights this man's had. He's beat some of the top fighters in the world. He is easily a contender, but the thing is, he just sometimes isn't on point at the moment in the UFC. For some reason, he doesn't click all the time when he should be. And Vitor Belfort, it's Vitor Belfort, let's be honest. Like, I know his last fight against Jacare, it was a bit of a mauling. It is Jacare. But I think for Vitor, it's a big transition he's having at the moment. Let's be honest, from that TRT, without it, I think it's actually taken a bit longer with his age to get his body used to being without it. I hope that we see the Vitor Belfort, in great shape and hungry for this fight. Because I want to see a Vitor Belfort that can produce the performances we've seen before. But Gegard, he's such a good athlete. And I hope this is maybe his time to shine for himself.
Yeah, I think this is a prime Gegard Mousasi, and I also think this is a guy that on his best night could be the number one middleweight in the world, right? If you put all the names in a hat, Bisping and I guess Hendo for purposes of this pay-per-view this weekend, and Luke Rockhold and Jacare Souza, I think Mousasi is competitive with all of those guys. I mean, certainly he had his crack at Jacare a couple years ago, but his best performance of his UFC career was the last one against Thiago Marreta Santos, and Santos has certainly lost some shine after losing that fight and then to Eric Spicely.
Yeah.
But when he fought Marreta, Santos was really coming on, and Mousasi muted that momentum in a hurry. So I think Mousasi is certainly the more known quantity here, and obviously you mentioned the experience. Since he's fought with the UFC, he's competed at least 3 times a year, still only 31 years old.
Yeah.
Vitor, I think, when he first was coming off the TRT, I think he was sort of an unknown. Now I think we sort of know what we're going to get, and it's not all that different than before, other than the fact that he's just presumed to be less dangerous. I mean, he's still dangerous early and still poses a knockout threat to Gegard Mousasi, but gosh, Mousasi is just so good everywhere. I think this would be a massive upset if Vitor was able to do it. And not only do I lean towards Mousasi, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him get the finish, within 10 minutes even.
Yeah, I was thinking under 2 rounds, because especially Vitor, he's that kind of 1-round guy. Once he goes past 1 round, he starts to really deflate a lot, and you can start to really work on him. The main event then, gosh, there's so much to go on about. Look, firstly, I'll also put out there, people, the UFC have done a Michael Bisping documentary. They've also done the UFC Countdown. Honestly, watch them, get yourselves into this. It's insane. Like, I can't even go into words about how proud I am that Bisping got this fight in Manchester. The UFC, Dana White kind of said, look, here's a thank you to all the things you've done for us over the years, stepping in short notice against Chael Sonnen and winning, but whatever. It's one of them things, like, he is a company man, and they've kind of, gave him a thank you for letting him do this in Manchester, I suppose. It's Dan Henderson. I am torn, John. I am so torn, because Dan Henderson, if he won and he left, it would be like a fairy tale. It would be a beautiful story. But it's Michael Bisping, UK, defending his belt in the UK. It would be beautiful to see that. Oh man, I am emotionally torn in this fight.
It is really exciting that this fight is almost here. And, I'm proud of my friend, Michael Bisping, whom I've worked with at Fox over the years and gotten to know on a personal level. I'm proud that he knew what it was going to take to beat Luke Rockhold, and obviously the stars were aligned that night. I'm proud that he sold out this arena the way he did, and sometimes I feel like he hasn't always had the total support of everybody in England. Even when I was over there for the Anderson Silva fight, I felt like there were still some sour apples from some people. So, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in this fight, and I really do think that he deserves to be a bigger betting favorite than he is right now. I mean, I think Dan Henderson's recent history certainly tells you that at 46 years old, he still has a lot of pop, and on any given Saturday night can knock out a credentialed middleweight like Hector Lombard. But, Bisping is accurate. He's nonstop. He knows what he needs to do to win in this particular matchup. He's got cardio for days. Other than the fact that Bisping has one eye, I really don't see a lot of disadvantages for him in the fight. And I think, unlike a lot of guys who might force the issue against somebody like Hendo at this stage of his career, I think Bisping will be patient. Eventually, a kill shot will materialize. And, I don't see this fight going 25 minutes. I think you're seeing a knockout on either side. I mean, I couldn't have more respect for Hendo. He deserves this opportunity. And I think the stars aligned for him as well, not just with the Lombard fight, but the fact that Bisping was the champion at this stage of his career. Fascinating matchup. I don't think the fight's going to last particularly long, but man, I can't wait to see it.
I'm with you. Definitely, I can't see it going to a decision. I just can't see both fighters letting it get to the decision. I am so amped up. I can't even concentrate properly. I feel terrible right now for not even doing this. I'm like, honestly, John, I'm like a kid at Christmas, my friend. John, thank you so much for your time. I am going to let you get off. Again, ladies and gentlemen, jump on to the podcast, the Kenny Anik and Florian podcast. You can follow Jon Anik on Twitter. What's the Twitter handle?
It's Jon_Anik. Thanks, man.
I will put that on the underneath as well in the description. Get online, give the podcast a listen, give John a follow, interact with John. John, you'll be putting the betting lines out for this fight as well. I'm sure you will, because you always do for the fight cards, which is awesome to keep an eye out for, ladies and gentlemen, if you like to dabble $1 or $2. And John, again, thank you so much for your time, sir. It's been an absolute pleasure as always.
My pleasure, man. Thank you, and you deserve to be in the building this weekend, man. So enjoy the show.